Welcome to Bottom Up, a monthly podcast dedicated to issues and topics of interest to young lawyers in Wisconsin and beyond. I'm your host, Emil Ovbiagele. Good day, people. This is Emil on the WIS Law podcast called Bottom Up. We are here for our third episode, and today we get to talk about a very, very exciting topic, a very expansive topic, a monster of a topic, work-life balance within the law, and what we feel might be missing in the conversation. And today I have some very important people, some very cool people in the house today to help discuss and really expand on this issue and define it. What does it mean? Why is it such a thing right now within the legal industry? What can we do to sort of level set and kind of get at the heart of the problems that the topic, or at least that the issue, seems to be getting at? And we have guests from who are going to provide a variety of perspectives. And without further ado, I am going to, first of all, introduce my guest co-host, attorney Kristen Hardy.
Hi, everybody.
You guys all know Kristen. Today, we're going to have a little bit of a format. We might not be as passive as guests. We might also, as hosts, we might be lending some of our inputs as well. In addition to Kristen Hardy, we have two guests on the show today. One of them is a friend of mine, a mentor of mine, my first boss, attorney Ryan Woody. And I'm going to let Ryan introduce himself, because I may not do it justice.
Thanks, Emil. Yeah, my name's Ryan Woody. I'm from West Bend. I work at the law firm of Matisse & Wickert and Lair out in Hartford. Started working there in 2004 when I graduated. When I started, we had 5 lawyers in a single office, and we have grown. We now have 6 offices across the United States, probably 5 times the amount of attorneys we had when I started, and it's starting to get interesting to manage. Primarily practice in litigation, doing insurance subrogation and some ERISA work around the country, and so that's me. Yeah, we did make the mistake of hiring Emil, but fortunately he's moved on. Only kidding.
Thank you very much, Ryan. You forgot to mention you're a national expert on Medicare, on the Medicare Secondary Payer Act, which is a very mundane statute that only very smart people understand.
Yeah, it's just a small few poor people, and so I'm at that table. But
well, it's a pleasure to have you, Ryan. And we also have someone else who I have worked with in the past on at least the YLD board with the state bar. She's a trailblazer in her own right, not just within the law, but also being an advocate on speaking on very important issues that affect young lawyers and associates across the country. Is LinkedIn famous? The most impressive attorney, Emily Stedman.
Thank you, Emil. I should say that I'm originally from Atlanta, so if the word lawyer comes up, I am saying lawyer, not lawler, which a client recently thought I was saying when I say lawyer. I've lived in Milwaukee for 9 years and have been practicing in Milwaukee for 9 years, first as a federal law clerk and then the last 6 years as a big law associate doing commercial litigation, general commercial litigation, all kinds of breach of contract claims, really anything that business and business people are fighting about. I'm currently a senior associate at Hush Blackwell in their Milwaukee office and in their transportation, manufacturing, and technology industry team. And then I do have somewhat of a side gig on LinkedIn where I talk openly about well-being for attorneys and lifting the veil for associates in big law.
We also didn't mention that Emily is a past president of the Young Lawyers Division.
Yes.
Yeah.
We all served, myself, Emily, and Kristen all served on the board at some point in time together. And I think, Kristen, it's important that we just maybe make a brief intro of ourselves because it's going to be important for the conversation we're going to be having going forward. So, Kristen?
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Emil. As I told you guys in the last podcast, I'm Kristen Hardy. I practice in-house. right now I'm an insurance attorney, but I kind of learned under compliance, international compliance, everything from anti-bribery, anti-corruption to internal investigations. It's kind of my bag. Right now, I'm on our insurance team at my company, so I handle anything related to our risk-based products, from development to claims. And I've been there doing that for about a year and a half, so I'm still pretty green. But I've been in-house my entire career, so I think I am the only person here who is not a litigator or who has never been a litigator, which is fun stuff.
That just means Kristen is in the burbs, and we all practice in the ghetto.
I think what I forgot to say, I've been practicing for, is it 8 years?
Yeah, 8 years.
8 years. So.
Yeah. And Emily, you've been practicing law for, I think, 10 years now?
9.
9.
Okay, 9.
If you include my clerkship, some people call that practicing, some don't, but 9 years out of law school.
You just seem so much wiser than us.
Right.
And Ryan?
Yeah, I'm the old man. I've been out since 2004, so you do the math there on that one.
Okay. And I'm Emil, and I've been practicing law for 8 years. I own and manage a law firm, a small law firm downtown Milwaukee. I primarily practice in the areas of civil litigation and employment law, and my firm also does some corporate and real estate work as well. And I'm the current past president of the Young Lawyers Division of State Bar of Wisconsin, and the president-elect of the Milwaukee Bar Association. And I think the reason, before we attack the topic of work-life balance, what it means within the law, what's missing from the conversation, it was very important for Kristen and I to sort of get a wider perspective and get lawyers who have different perspectives because of the very nature of the topic. And so, for example, Ryan is a more experienced attorney who's sort of seen the law change and across the decades, and is an owner, is a partner at a growing boutique firm, a national firm, and is a litigator. Emily is a senior associate at a large law firm in litigation. She comes with her own different set of perspectives, a younger lawyer as well. Kristen, you're in-house. You primarily do more transactional related work, and I think that comes with its own set of perspectives. And I'm a younger lawyer as well, but also happen to be a younger lawyer that owns a law firm, and I think that that comes with its own set of perspectives as it relates to this topic. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to you, Kristen.
Thank you. Let's kick it off. So, we understand now how many years we've been practicing and where we practice and our various practice areas. So with that as the foundation, I want to pose a question to the group, to everyone. What does work-life balance mean to you? Like, what do those words strung together mean? And how has that changed over the course of your career? Anybody feel free to jump in here.
I like to say that although I recognize work-life balance as a phrase we all toss around, I don't have it. I don't proclaim to have it. My husband would tell you most days I don't have it, but I think about it as exercising choice and building autonomy in my life and practice. I think when I first moved to Milwaukee and was clerking, in the before times, it was pretty easy to have balance because clerking for me was essentially a 9-to-5 job. I couldn't work from home, so I left my work at my desk, and I had a pretty good boundary between work and my personal life. 3 years later, when I joined a big firm, that choice went out the window pretty quickly for me, and I really, really struggled with a sense of being accessible all the time for partners and senior associates. And I had just met my now husband at the time, balancing that, and I really lost myself in that job. And once I realized that had happened, work-life balance, again, became for me a way to set boundaries, start implementing choice and control over my calendar and my day and my activities and how I spent my time.
Thanks, Emily. Oh, you, Ryan?
Sure. Well, when I started, I believe if you go back and do the research, it was a thing back in 2004, but it wasn't quite the big thing it is today. And so it wasn't really something that we were thinking about or looking at. But as a person, as you grow and you grow a family and you've got other interests and you're trying to balance out your health as you get older and all those other things, then it becomes kind of in more focus, and that there are all these different aspects to your life, work being one of them, and they're all connected. And the thing I don't like about the phrase work-life balance is that it somehow suggests that you're on this, this scale, and you've got life over here, and you've got work over here, and generally work is bad and life is good, and you need to figure out how you can take a little bit more away from the work side and get a little bit more of the life side. And I think that creates just this misperception with people that that's what you're striving for, and that there is this perfect balance, and that if you could just get there, you'll be happy. And I think it's I don't think balance is necessarily a bad descriptor, because we are trying to constantly balance out the different aspects of our life. But I think that it gets people in the wrong mindset that it's not a thing that it's a thing you're searching for, not a thing that you're doing. So I've heard people say that it's not a noun, it's a verb.
And now, a word from our sponsors. The Wisconsin Solo and Small Firm Conference is the premier event for those running a practice in Wisconsin. Come see what it's all about and join us in the Dells from October 27th through the 29th. For more information, visit wispar.org/WSSFC. Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up Podcast.
I want to jump in here kind of to that point, Ryan. There's this book I read earlier this year called Unapologetically Ambitious. And it's the woman, she's a board member for Nordstrom right now, but previously she was the CEO of an organization called MetroStream. But in the book, she talks about how she hates that idea of work-life balance for those reasons that you just mentioned. And she talks about work-life integration. And I love that because oftentimes, especially in this profession, we look at ourselves as so one-dimensional. I'm a lawyer here. Or even when we talk about bringing our full selves to work, like, where's my full self? Because this is my work, I'm a professional, and I can't show any of my real life. I'm very against that idea. We're layered people, we're multidimensional, and that's how our lives are. So the work and the life have to be integrated. They are one and the same. And I get that we want to strike a balance, but I don't know, I just thought that was really interesting, and I love that phrase because we are integrating what we do in our day-to-day, but then also our careers, we spend a lot of time at work. So how are we integrating that? And when you shift the mindset to not think about trying to balance them and more as they work together as partners, I think that kind of really changes the dynamic of how we approach it.
If we take a step back, the problem about the work-life balance conversation for me, at least as it relates to the legal industry, is we've easily adopted this phrase, which is very imprecise. And that's usually a very odd thing for us as lawyers, right? Because, in a profession that deals with preciseness. And so all the conversations had around work-life balance, and this one is going to be no exception, oftentimes feels like, it feels insurmountable because it's hard, because that phrase in reality embodies a lot of concepts, right? So, like Ryan, you said something about, this whole idea of it puts work and life in this, on this collision path, and on one side and the other. And, another aspect of it is it kind of makes it seem like work is separate from life.
Right.
Right. Which, and I get it, right? We have to work with the imprecise verbs and imprecise words is for what they are. And so when I was thinking about this, I talked to a lot of people, and everyone who talks or engages in a topic, right, there's an end in mind. And so I think maybe if we take a step back to ask, why has it become important? What's the goal? Yeah. What are we striving for? Emily, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think it gets at what Kristen referenced about being an attorney, but also being things that aren't an attorney. Some of the best advice I ever heard was at a female litigator's CLE down in Chicago, and a woman said, if you can't be yourself at your place of work, you need to get out. And I think for me, work-life balance, the end goal is being yourself at work and being yourself when you're not at work, and not letting work interfere with being yourself outside of work, and not let being yourself at work interfere with doing your job. And to do that, you have to be yourself. You have to be, I hesitate to use the word balanced, because I don't think there are going to be days where work overpowers, your personal interests, but they have to be working together to move you forward towards your goals. And I think we'll talk a little bit later about generational differences, but I think what's starting to happen is millennials, and particularly younger millennials and Gen Z, older Gen Z, we don't wear the title attorney like a badge of honor like some of the older generations do. We don't want to be at the end of our lives still at our desks, right? We want to be all these other things alongside of being an attorney, and I think that's the end goal from my perspective.
I would say that I kind of straddling the line between generations, maybe the generation above you guys, is a mentality shift for sure. I think if you talk to maybe the majority, I hate to paint with broad brushes, but of older lawyers, is that they felt that, when you talk to them about these newer concepts, or what many people in the younger generation mean by work-life balance, is kind of antithetical to the practice that they got into. They're like, that's what we signed up for, We're firemen, we're professionals. We became lawyers, and we just work, and we jump on fires and we put them out when they come up, and that's our job. That's kind of what we signed up for. And it's certainly not like law school gives you the misimpression of what you're getting into. While it may not give you great practical training as to how to be a lawyer when you come out, there's no illusion that it's going to be long days, it's going to be weekends, and that means that other parts of your life are not going to get as much as had you decided to become a different profession. And I don't even want to
Yeah. To add to that, I think, if we take the phrase work-life balance just for what it is, and, as the big topic we're here to discuss today, I think the difference is millennials, older Gen Z, we know we're signing up for that. We don't see it as sustainable. And we want to bring tools and boundaries to the practice that help us not burn out, that help us still be practicing when we're 50, 60, 70, if that's what we want. And we're challenging the idea of whether how it's always been done is really, truly sustainable anymore.
And I'll even add to that, which I agree, but it's also, is it necessary? Taking it out of the legal profession, I've read a lot of articles just in corporations where people are saying it's a lot, people aren't working as much now that they're working from home. And my counter to that is, well, they weren't when they were working in the office either. They were in the office at the water cooler. They were in the office grabbing coffee. They were having side conversations in their office. They were going out to hour-long lunches. Like, all of these things have already been happening, and we act like it's a productivity issue. But frankly, I don't know if all of it is necessary. I think we've moved away. I don't know, someone stop me if I'm wrong, but we've moved away from it needs to be this butts in seat culture, which we know was really prevalent in the legal profession. But it's like, butts in seat for what? If I'm here and you see I'm here and the work is getting done regardless, why does it matter? I've been very fortunate to always have a boss, a supervisor, and again, I am in-house and I've been in-house my entire career, but they've always said, is the work getting done? That is all I care about. If you get here at 4 a.m. or if you get here at 9:30, I don't care. Is the work being done? And to me, I have that perception from being in a house. That's what counts. It doesn't, sometimes it may be, I have a late night. Emil called me last night and I was still working pretty late. So sometimes I do have late nights in house, but it's not sustainable for me to do that every single day. And I don't think I would want to do, if I was in Gen Z especially, like, I'm not doing that, because you don't have to do that. There are plenty of companies and plenty of firms that are not going to require that of you.
And just so I think you touched on something, and you guys are touching on something right now that I think is very important about this idea of the generational shift, right? And the thing I want to get back to, in a sense, is expanding on the ideas of the different elements of this work-life balance concept, because the moniker started, at least has reared its head with utmost importance in recent times, especially during the pandemic, as a stand-in for I want to work from home, right? But that's just not work balance. There's more to it, right? There you have ideas of well-being, you have ideas of work flexibility, accommodations, you have ideas of fair pay, fair wages for work done. It's also been used as a phrase to talk about employee benefit policies and things that you have in place. There's so much. So, and I know it's tempting for us to just dive into it, right? And if we do not understand, or we don't have this understanding of what the concept is, and we don't approach it from those lenses, right? You could have conversations where people are just talking past each other, right? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things we talked about, is trying to ensure that people understand that work-life balance is not going to mean the same thing for everybody. It's not going to mean the same thing for every firm or every sector of the legal industry or at every point in one's career, right? And I did some research. I'm trying to figure out, and some people have come up with the work-life integration phrase. Some people have thought about it as, okay, thinking of work as things you have to do, and life as the things you want to do. Just to try to, because if you don't define it, if you don't define the problem, if you don't understand the concept, and if employers or colleagues aren't talking from a common nucleus of understanding of any topic, there's a problem in terms of solving whatever the issues might be, because you may be dealing with two different issues. So what's your definition? So not what it means. So as we talk about this, as we talk about the phrase work-life balance, can we get some common definitions of the concepts? It doesn't have to be clean of what we're talking about.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I just want to, so I'll stop you there. And I think my answer is no.
And now, a word from our sponsors. In these uncertain economic times, the State Bar of Wisconsin wants to make sure that you and your practice have the best available tools. Ultimate Pass and Books Unbound are available for purchase using 6-month installment plans. Contact our customer service team at 1-800-728-7788 for more information. Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up Podcast.
And that comes from a lot of conversations with the different lawyers in my firm, whether it's here in Wisconsin, in our California office, our Florida office. Everyone's got different perspectives, and they have a different idea of work-life balance for themselves. So I'll give you an example. Some people, they've got children, and they are dropping children off in the morning, and they've got a sick kid at home, and they got to go to the doctor's office. And so what they're looking for is flexibility, saying, look, I know that I'm going to get my work done. I know I have this much to do today, but I'm going to space it out, and I don't need you micromanaging me. I don't need a butt-in-the-seat approach, because that doesn't work for me. So they're looking for flexibility, whereas other people are saying, look, I'll give this example, and she'll know who she is, but we're in an axe-throwing league, and on whatever night, I just block that off. I'm not checking my phone. I'm at 5 o'clock on this day. We're going, and we're going to enjoy that. And so what I need are well-defined boundaries, so that unless literally the building is burning down, I'm not going to be available, and I want you to respect that. And so those are different definitions of work-life balance. They're different needs for those different individuals, and I think that at least from an employer-owner's perspective, we have to be flexible to be able to accommodate those different definitions for those people. So
is the best way to then go about it starting with the end in mind? Because all of those things point to, I want to live a more fulfilled life. I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled. Whatever the hell that might mean. And happiness, right, means different things to different people. So Ryan doesn't think we could ever come up with a working definition.
Yeah.
So it's a fool's errand.
I mean, I think he's right, because I don't even know if we honestly need I think it may be more harmful than helpful for us to try to say this is exactly what it is, because it means so many different things for different people. But I'll give you my answer. Work-life balance is a combination of flexibility and being able to have that integration. Like, those things are really important for me. So because I've worked at corporations, they usually have workout classes over lunch. Like, they're free, or you pay like a nominal fee, and that's what a lot of people in the company, it's usually a few lawyers, but a lot of people in the company, you know, it's encouraged from a mental health standpoint, from a physical health standpoint, to work out. I want to be able to work out at least once a week at lunch. It's one class I want to take. Usually I take them in the evening, but I want to be able to do that without someone saying, oh, no, you can never. You always have to, you know, be sitting at your desk for lunch. That's not actually, at my company, it's you go to lunch with people. That's usually the concept. But to me, like, that's flexibility. I'm very involved in the legal community. I want to be able to say, hey, I have this 6 o'clock MBA meeting, and I'm going to walk around the block to the MBA to, you know, conduct this meeting or be part of this meeting. And I want to be able to do that. That's the flexibility. That's part of my professional life. Those are things I want to do as a volunteer. I think I should be doing as a lawyer, but also things that make me happy, like working out, and, you know, it's good for my mental health. So it's flexibility and this integration to where I am my full self, who cares about XYZ, but also as a professional, you're not saying I need to be working 9 to 5, because sometimes I work 9 to 7. Sometimes I work, you know, 8 to whatever, 7. It changes every day depending on your workload. So I need that flexibility.
Yeah, I think flexibility and choice, if we're going to put big tenets over it, and for me, this really does start straddling the line between work-life balance and well-being and mental health. I think of work-life balance as stepping away from what I feel like I should be doing, or what I think this imaginary boss on my shoulder is saying you should be billing your time. And I don't know if the billable hour could be a whole podcast episode.
Yes.
And I think that plays a huge role for anyone that does have to bill their time. But it is letting go of that feeling of I should be working during these hours, and actually I have the power to choose how I spend my time and what I'm doing, as long as I'm getting the work done. I think so, flexibility and choice.
So I know you guys don't want this, but it looks like we have some concepts to work with, because it's going to drive me crazy as a litigator if I don't understand. You know, I'm like, Judge, we got to define certain things here. What exactly are we talking about? So I've heard concepts of flexibility, integration, well-being, choice, and overarching all of this is the idea that it's a very individualized conversation, right? Just a little segue though, doesn't this also, when you talk, let's take flexibility, for example, Kristen, isn't there an assumption that every attorney at every part in their careers can manage that flexibility and still be productive? There's a presumption that people and everyone,
Maybe it's
without any structure. What? I'm sorry?
Maybe it's a rebuttable presumption.
Okay, a rebuttable presumption. All right. Okay. Well, nicely paid, counsel. You shut that one down. That in its tracks.
Is that presumption coming from a podcast host or an employer,
Right.
or
An associate at a big
No,
Right.
so I'm just saying, right? So day one, right? You have day one. You have a young lawyer coming in to the profession and says, "Hey, I want to be a litigator, but I'm going to have to work 3.5 days at home, right? Because I need that flexibility." And in any employee context, right, there is the idea that I need to also know what you can do with freedom, right? You have to, and what I'm seeing right now when this conversation is being had is like this is a presumption. You have to give me, and this is just an example, extreme example, but these are my list of demands. This is what you have to do. This is what you have to adapt, because the very individualized nature of the conversation makes it hard to create systems, because it means different things for different people. Because it's individualized, there is a risk that some people will be left out. And from an employer standpoint, from a system standpoint, how do you create general systems that tackle a very individualized issue?
Well, first, this is funny because, and maybe we'll get to this a little bit later when we talk about those generational differences, but you don't have that agency, or most young lawyers don't feel like they have that agency when they come in to start making demands about what they will and won't do. When I first started working, I worked at an international company, and this was not because the boss was putting this on me. This is me. This is Kristen. Where I would answer an email, I'm still kind of like this. I'll answer an email at any time. It's 2 a.m, which is very common in an international company. Someone's awake. Oh yeah, no, I can get on the computer. I'm up, so I can get on the computer and do X, Y, Z. And I set that expectation to where you could get to me no matter what. No one else did that. That was all me, because I thought that was the way that I needed to work. And I like work, and I didn't mind if I wasn't doing anything. So yes, one could say you can make this list of demands and we can, but realistically, you're a type A, you went to law school. That is not how you're coming in the game. And also you're too afraid that, we've been pitting each other against ourselves, or the system has pitted us against each other during law school, that I have to do X, Y, Z because I want to be partner, or I have to do X, Y, Z because I want to be the GC. Like, you already know that. So you don't have that autonomy. It's interesting you talk about it as if it's a choice, because I'm not so sure that it is. And before you start, you talked about generalizing the system. I don't think you need to generalize the system. I know that makes it easier for you as an employer, but you have employees, figure it out. You should be able to talk to your employees and say, what do you need? How can I help you? That's what a good manager, a good boss does. They figure out within these parameters what makes the most sense for my individual employee.
I agree with you on I run a small shop. I can do that. I can sit down. I got 9 people. I can sit down every day and figure out what these 9 people want. How does that look like when you're running a law firm that has 300, 400 lawyers, or a firm that has 50, 60 lawyers across different states and all that stuff, and you have support staff as well? Because that's also a different conversation too. When we bring in the support staff element to it, we're just focusing on lawyers. Ryan, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, just to first get on the record that I was in Emil's first interview, and he did not come in saying that. In fact, he said the exact opposite thing.
Of course he did.
I can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can count on me. And then he was just really happy that we were going to pay him.
Yep.
But I do see some more of that, especially among potential laterals, and maybe in California a lot more than other states, is that there is I've got this other life and willing to help out kind of more on a flexible part-time basis. And typically that's not what we're looking for, but I do see it more now. I will say, as far as setting policies that are kind of across the board,
I think we're getting into the second half of the show, huh?
Yeah, there is a temptation. You, as an employer, you want to have a policy. You got this book that's this is my handbook. It's got all these policies in it. We apply it. We're trying to call balls and strikes and do everything, treat everyone the same or equally, whatever. How can we make all these different accommodations? And I can say that we do have different policies for whether you're an attorney or whether you're staff, and so you can be a little bit more flexible maybe with the way that your attorney policies are, and maybe you have a little bit more room to be, I guess, creative, or even more flexible maybe with your staff who are typically non-billable, setting aside maybe paralegals. But so what some of the things that we've done is nothing new. It's what people are doing, is allowing a lot more flexibility, the flex time for both attorneys and staff, the ability to work from home, although we're not, I know there are law firms out there who are fully embracing the virtual law firm. And
Really?
that's really awesome. I'd love to hear about it. We're not there yet. And so right now we're saying, well, the staff can do a day at home, but we really got to work these schedules out, because we do need people in the office to do these tasks, and sometimes you find yourself shorthanded, and heaven forbid you don't want me filing anything in anywhere, because it'll get screwed up.
And now, a word from our sponsors. Would you like to implement new efficiencies into your law practice but don't know where to begin? Practice 411, the State Bar of Wisconsin's Law Office Management Assistance Program, is the place to start. Don't wait. Contact Practice 411 today for a complimentary and confidential consultation at 1-800-957-4670. Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up podcast.
So we do that, and then we offer, we've offered some flex Fridays for the staff this summer, just so they can, kind of take off early. But really, it's been giving them back time and giving them more flexibility, and then also just trying to remind people that there are boundaries, and that especially for the staff, like, you know, your expectations are when they're leaving, like they're done for the day, right? And there are different expectations for lawyers, but I'd be interested to hear more about the virtual experiences from someone who's doing it.
So
Because I want to also touch on something about
yeah. So before we get into what firms are now doing, right, and you know, and what lawyers can be doing, because I think that's going to be the second half of the show. We still need to talk about the all the philosophical nuances of this. So take it away, Emily. It was a point you wanted to make.
Sure. So I think there's a huge misconception in firm leadership and senior attorney, more experienced attorney leadership about the confidence that young lawyers come to the table with when they join firms. There's this idea that, you know, if partner X tells you you cannot take off lunch to go to the doctor, that you cannot take a vacation, that associate will go tell firm leadership that they're struggling with this partner. That's rarely going to happen. I think in an ideal world, all associates have the gumption that Emil has described, but I just don't think that's the reality. Right. I do think associates have more power to do some of those things than they believe they do, but to step into that power, they need partners and senior associates to lead by example and not have unrealistic expectations, to actually take time off to go pick up their kids or go to a kid's baseball game, take their dog to the vet, whatever it is. And I wrote down a note. Firms will take from you whatever you're willing to give them. They are ultimately a business, not people that really care about you. And so if you separate that from if you separate yourself from the people you like and the people you work with, and think of the firm as a business, and think they will take from me as much as I will give them, and really question and ask yourself, how much do I want to give them? How much can I give them? And start to think about what you want your practice to look like. That's where you'll start figuring out what balance really means to you. You can look around and say, I want to do what this partner's doing. This partner over here is a horrible example. I don't want to do what they're doing, but you have to start asking yourself those questions. What do you want to give? What can you give?
Let's take a step back.
Emil, we're not going to keep taking steps back.
No,
we're going forward.
No, it is. We are going forward, but it's just my regular
I know.
default
I'm
phrase.
just messing with
Because I like taking step backs, right? You know, like I feel like I'm smoking a little pipe and you know, legs crossed and looking into the sunset. But this is a real step back. If we take a look at the conversation, right, that's being had, are we asking ourselves, okay, why? Like, why is this now becoming a very, very pressing topic within the legal industry? Because if you're making these decisions and we're giving these ideas in a vacuum, and the structure under which we don't examine the structure under which we operate under, I don't think it gets us anywhere. Why? Is there an idea that we are, generally, there's a
horrible feeling. We are depressed.
We're depressed.
We're anxious.
Yep.
We are abusing substances. We're just completely out of whack. I mean, attorneys. So to back up a little bit, during my time as a young lawyer division president, mental health and well-being for attorneys became a real passion of mine. A study came out from the ABA. Attorneys notoriously self-report as struggling with all the things we just mentioned at higher rates than the general public. And I think the pandemic exacerbated that, and people started becoming much more comfortable talking about the fact that we were struggling. Mm-hmm. And that has pushed the idea of work-life balance, flexibility, choice, autonomy to the forefront of our profession. And, if we don't do something about it, like I said earlier, the profession will not be sustainable for a whole host of people, and primarily diverse attorneys. So women, people of color, members of the LGBTQIA community will be leaving the profession as much, if not more, than they already are. But, men and white men are not immune, and I would say they probably underreport that they're struggling with these things. But that, for me, from my perspective, that's the why.
plug for WISLAP services. The State Bar offers, I believe they're free services if you do find yourself struggling with mental health issues.
And now, a word from our sponsors. Are you struggling with work-life balance issues? Could you use some help addressing these challenges? WISLAP offers confidential well-being support to lawyers, judges, and law students. With trained peer volunteers, structured well-being resources, and individualized support services, WISLAP aims to foster work-life balance within the Wisconsin legal community. Find us on the web at wispar.org/WISLAP. Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up podcast.
I'll just add to it. Emily, the year that, I can't remember if we did it together, we were co-chairs for the YLC. Remember we brought in the guy from Chicago who talked about
Chris DeSantis.
Yes, Chris DeSantis. So he talked about generational differences, and he kind of gives the history of each from, I think we started at baby boomers on to Gen Z, everything that happened in the history of their lives, just from a general perspective, and that informs how we work and live and what we do. And I honestly think that's a starting piece here. So for us as millennials, we watched, we went through 9/11. We watched the housing market crash. Like we were young when that happened, and that's something that we dealt with. A lot of us watched our parents lose their jobs because of that, or their homes because of that. So we have this different relationship with work. So then, we grow up, and then we inform the next generation. So I think Gen Z is even more like, I'll leave this job. I know that my, brother or sister or mother or grandparent, they lost their job at this point. I'll leave this job. I know that it's a business and they don't necessarily care. They care about me as long as I can be a producer. So I'll go do something else. So I really think all those historical, which we don't have enough time to get into that, but if anyone has a chance, or if you had a chance to listen to Chris DeSantis, that history and what we went through informs a lot of the way that we all behave now in work and the way that we show up in life.
Yeah, and millennials and Gen Z are statistically the most stressed out and anxious generations, and we're also statistically more likely to talk about these things, which is also opening the door to these conversations.
So the law isn't in a vacuum, right? It's a service-oriented industry. We are a capitalist free market society. And no one's going to deny that, each decade, comes this reaffirmance of what I call productivity porn. And this, it's grow or die. It's not okay. It's not just sufficient that you grew your revenues 10% last year. This quarter, you have to grow it quarter to quarter. And these are the clients. This is the environment in which the law operates, right? So firms, right, are and corporations are not immune from that idea, right? So you got to do more work. Then you throw in technology, right, which makes it easier to triple tax, whatever, and work till whenever, right? So is there the idea that as against the backdrop of the current economy and some of the attitudes we picked up from, being capitalist, this grow or die mentality, profitability, productivity, is that also exacerbating the stress levels? And are young lawyers in this generation experiencing it like, with such brute force like no other? Because Ryan, we talked about this when you started practicing law. You had to file a brief. There was no e-filing. You had to make sure you were done with that brief on the filing day at noon, so you could send it to a runner who sends it to court to file it by 4:30. Now, with a click of a button, you can file up until about midnight of the day your brief is due. You go back further, clients had to mail you a letter or call you on the phone or fax you. They weren't texting you, they weren't emailing you. And so do you think that from maybe a generational standpoint, that maybe part of the misapprehensions or misunderstanding of the problem comes from the fact that some lawyers operated or at least practiced law at a time when these pressures were just not that intense? Are the pressures different?
Wow, yeah, a couple topics there. So first, you've set up the Parkinson's law, which is work will always expand to fill the time that you have. And the extended ECF deadlines is a great example in how we used to be able to quit our if we're in the litigation side, we got a deadline, right? And your deadline, you're done at 5. Now you've got a deadline that's 7 hours later, so that means I should be checking the grammar and maybe reworking these sentences until they are perfect. And frankly, in a lot of these courts, you've got judges who expect it to be perfect. I've the amount of filing rejected due to the wrong font size. I won't get into that's a whole nother topic, but. Yeah, I mean, so there is this problem that technology has brought us greater efficiencies, greater availability. The notion that you can go home, finish up that brief at night after dinner, and ignore the other things that you should be doing. You should be paying attention to your family. You should be doing this, with your spouse. But rather you're not. You're like, well, I've got a deadline. I've got to work on this. So I've got this time. I've got this computer. It's connected. I can spend that time. So that is a problem, and I don't see that going away. And I also have just a greater concern about, this work from home and that some people will be great at it because they are disciplined and they have a system. But that is not the majority of us. The majority of us will be unable to, now that we have no physical separation between work and our home, is that there will be no real way to say no to the work. If wait, why should I sit down and even watch the show? Or why should I go to my kid's t-ball game? Or I have the ability to continue working.
You can do it from the t-ball game even.
and so that's a problem. And again, we don't prepare well enough in law school for any practical realities. It's all the hypothetical, and I mean, maybe it's changing. It's been so long since I've, as you know, been to law school. But yeah, I think we've got to foundationally set up attorneys better in school about these realities and less about these, the rule against perpetuities and stuff like that.
Kristen, you going to say something?
No, I was going to say we are getting into another topic that I think would be great for a part 2 of this.
Yeah, but I don't think we're going to accomplish anything in the first episode. This is why this topic is so awesome. We've been able to maybe define it, maybe not define it. We do acknowledge that it is very individualized. And we've acknowledged that, technology and productivity and the addiction to productivity, which has been exacerbated by the economy that we live in and a system, an economic model that we perpetuate, has also led to this greater demands. And so, yes, younger lawyers, I think, are feeling the pressures, and they are starting their careers as such with those pressures from day one. Let me ask you this, though. Our expectations, and I want to talk to the younger lawyers, right? So, in the same time, there is also an expectation for higher compensation too, in an economy, or at least, I'm serious, right? In an economy that is driven primarily by billable hours, which means every revenue dollar is tied to how much time you're working, right? So Ryan, how do employers look at that?
I mean, it's a problem. Not every law firm is a huge one with huge profits and the ability to just continually increase their billable rate. And so I think that maybe young lawyers don't understand, if they're in private practice, that the product that they're selling, the product that is on the shelf, is their time.
And now, a word from our sponsors. The Wisconsin Solo and Small Firm Conference is the premier event for those running a practice in Wisconsin. Come see what it's all about and join us in the Dells from October 27th through the 29th. For more information, visit wispar.org/WSSFC. Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up podcast.
And so there's always going to be pressure until we change the way that we charge for our services. And I know that that's like you said, that's another podcast right there. But right now, predominantly, we're charging by the hour. And so if you're going to work less, that means that there's going to be less revenue coming in. At the same time, in this economy, we're seeing inflationary pressures on wages and overhead. Just everything that goes into our overhead costs more. And yet, for the majority of the medium and small law firms, we don't have the ability to just continually increase our rate. In fact, I work for a lot of insurance companies. I'll tell you right now, we've got rates that they've set 5-10 years ago, and we're on the same ones, and it's almost impossible to get them increased, even though the gas price is going up and everything is going up. The wages we have to pay for all our employees is going up. So there's a big crunch there, and that's going to create more pressure on our attorneys to produce and continue to produce and stick to their billable hour requirements.
Emily, do you think younger lawyers understand those, or is that a part of the conversation that's missing? You think there's an empathy gap between owners of firms, partners, the old generation, and younger lawyers and associates just starting in their careers?
There's definitely different perspectives and opinions.
Okay.
I can only speak to this from a big law perspective. I've been at 2 big law firms, both with billable hour requirements, both with steady market raises for associates over the 6 years that I've been in private practice. And there is definitely a disconnect between how much associates in big firms are now paid and the desire for more freedom and choice and lower billable hours. And as a senior associate, I am sort of straddling the line between completely understanding where the partners are coming from and being quite amazed with what our first year and second year associates understand about the dynamics of the buying power that associates have right now. Will that go away if we enter a recession? Sure. But I think expectations are incredibly high across the profession and then in big law, from the billable hour expectation to the expectations that attorneys just inherently put on themselves. And the economics of that could be not just a podcast episode, but probably a 4 or 5 year series of podcast episodes. I do think associates get it, and I do think it's very much a tension that associates are trying to deal with and address every day, and partners too.
Okay. Kristen, you got some thoughts before we close out this first
No, I will save
part?
my thoughts for our
The
part
second
2.
part?
Yes.
Oh, geez, I feel like we've not even gone much.
I know, we're scratching the surface. This is really good, though.
This is. And so the second part of this podcast episode, because we decided to split it in 2, is going to be dealing on, okay, hey, for all the messiness that it is an issue. It is a thing. It's something that we have to face. What can firms do? What can companies do? What can associates do? What can younger lawyers do? What can the bar do or the leaders do in trying to recognize and make improvements as it relates to the issues? So it's a 2-part episode. I don't know how to do this, but outro. Thank you. Thanks for listening to our podcast. If you have a topic you'd like us to explore, let us know. I'm your host, Emil Ovbiagele, and we'll catch you next time.